We have talked now, I guess, for the past couple of weeks on and off, although if we think about it, it actually goes back months, not weeks, about the situation with passports in this country, what's going on, how long you have to wait, and why some people, and we brought this up on the show yesterday, Natasha, have decided to hack the system because apparently it's worked, while the minister in charge says that's probably not the best thing to do. Well, let's talk to the minister in charge. Social Development Minister KARINA Gould is on the line. Minister Gould, let's start with the good news first, and that's the fact that you are opening new offices where people can pick up passports.
Yeah, that's right. So I know it has been challenging over the past couple of months with regards to passports. And I know particularly in Montreal, it's been frustrating as that's been kind of the most challenging spaces in the country, particularly around the Saint-Jean holiday. But I was in Trois-Rivières on Wednesday to announce that as of Wednesday in Trois-Rivières in Quebec, in Charlottetown in PEI, in Sault Ste. Marie in Ontario, and in Red Deer in Alberta, residents there can now access passport services with a 10-day turnaround time if they're traveling within 45 days.
Can I ask why those 4 locations in particular? Is demand higher there?
Well, they are locations that have significant populations but don't have access to passport services. Okay. So, for people who live in Trois-Rivières, they would have had, anywhere in between Montreal and Quebec City, they would have had to travel to either Montreal or to Quebec City to access passport services. And so this does 2 things. One, it makes sure that people who live in Trois-Rivières or the surrounding area can go there and they don't have to travel to either of those 2 cities, so they have closer proximity and access to passport services. And then it also relieves some of the pressure that we see in the bigger metropolitan areas like Montreal or Quebec City that will have less volume coming in from people who reside outside of those cities. So it's really about getting better services for Canadians where they live, and then also helping to lower the pressure in other offices that are serving bigger areas.
So we know now, Minister, that there have been over 1 million applications for passports, new and renewed, that have been filed since April. And when we asked the question of our listeners yesterday, and I don't want to suggest finger pointing here because I know you're discouraging people from, as I said off the top, pretending their travel dates are coming up because they know they can get their passports. But it seemed to be the consensus is, why did the government not appreciate the fact and try to actually deal with this before it became an issue, knowing that there would be increased travel once pandemic restrictions started being eased?
It's a fair question, and I would say that we did know there was going to be increased travel demand once the restrictions were eased. But what we didn't know is exactly when travel restrictions were going to be eased. So if we go back to February of this year, many provinces were still shut down because of COVID restrictions. And so we did start hiring additional people back in January, knowing that there was going to be an increase in demand, but we didn't hire nearly enough people to meet the rising demand that we saw into April, May, June, and continuing into the summer. I think what we've learned through this is that this really was a bit of an exceptional and extraordinary time because passports are generally very predictable. We know, how many are going to expire every year. We have a good sense of how many new passports are going to be asked for, so for people who've never had a passport before. But what we saw with the lifting of the travel restrictions is like all of that pent-up renewal and asking for new passports all came in at the exact same time. And so it's kind of like a highway, you build it and, at the middle of the day, there's no traffic, but, at rush hour, there's more demand than the highway can manage. And that's kind of what happened with passports. But what I can say is we've learned a ton of lessons on how to improve the system. We've, made a lot of changes, both in terms of at offices, in terms of triaging people and making sure people don't miss their travel. We've made a lot of changes in terms of how you can contact passport services, either at an office, at a Service Canada Centre, or on the phone lines. And now we're adding additional offices to meet that demand right across the country because, until Wednesday, there were only 35 offices in Canada, a big really huge country that offer passport services. We've now increased that by another 4, and we're going to be adding another 8 to 10 in the coming weeks as well.
So
So
can you
yesterday
estimate just how long that average delay will be now for someone who'd already applied back in April if they haven't gotten it yet? What backlog are we looking at here, and how much time do you expect it will take?
Yeah, so we've gotten through most of the applications that have been put in since April. And if they haven't gotten a passport, it may be because there was an error or additional work needed to be done, and that's going through the system right now. But if you've sent it in through the mail, it's about 3 months at this point in time. However, with the additional resources that we've hired, and we've hired about 450 people since July, and we're in the process of bringing on another 300 people. It's going to take a couple more weeks for everybody to be fully trained. But what we're working towards is that, clearing through that backlog in the coming weeks, and getting back into a more normal place as applications come in through the fall. But that's in the mail channel. If you're going to a passport office, 96% of people are getting their passports within 10 days.
So I wanted to ask you also, Minister, yesterday we asked listeners about their experience getting their passports. And yes, some traveled great distances to be able to get it in a reasonable time. Others did indeed fake their travel plans. And despite your request for people to not do so, the attitude kind of seems to be, well, you got to do what you got to do. So I want to know, how big a problem is this? Is it really that problematic that people fake their travel plans in order to get their passports?
Well, it's really unfair if they're doing that, because it means that they have, resources to try and get around the system if they have the resources to pay for a flight out of country. And it means that, they're putting someone who did all the right things, right? Who, sent their passport application off well in advance of travel, was trying to, do the right things. They are now being pushed further back because somebody is jumping ahead of them in the queue. So it's really not a very nice thing to do, and it's also not necessary. People we're at the point where, people are getting their passports ahead of travel. We make sure that anyone who gets to a passport office, either, if they have urgent travel, they're being seen right away, they're given an appointment later down the line if their travel is later, or they're being directed to, another service channel to make their application. So it's really unnecessary to do that. It's not fair, and I would say it's not a kind thing to do.
Agreed.
Okay, that said, now I will tell you what we said when we heard or read your comments yesterday, which was the fact that you acknowledge this is not a fair thing to do, and I think most people agree, but as Natasha said, it's been working because the system has not been. Is it more widespread than you're leading on? Are there hundreds, are there thousands of people doing this from what you're hearing from passport centers?
I guess it's hard to know, because we implicitly want to trust Canadians that when they're coming and telling us that they have urgent travel, that they're being honest. And it's, I don't think we want to get to the point where, we have to go even further than that. So that's, I think most Canadians are honest and are doing the right thing. And, if they don't have travel coming up, it's not really necessary to do that. And they're having an impact on other people. So that's why I say it's not a fair thing to do. It's not a kind thing to do. And it's really not a necessary thing to do either. So I would really discourage it, because they are having an impact on the folks who did the right thing.
I will add one thing, and that's that we did. So what did we say, Natasha? It's also un-Canadian.
It's very un-Canadian, but I'm telling you, the response that we got was, too bad, not my problem. The government put us in this position, which I know sounds, again, very un-Canadian, but what's your response to that, Minister?
Well, what I would say is I understand that, but if you don't have urgent travel, you don't necessarily need to do this right now. My recommendation to people is, because of the backlog that we have in the mail channel, we really do need to focus on getting through those applications, but we are meeting people's needs in terms of travel and getting their passports ahead of their trip. So we are able to do that. But if we have people that are, faking their travel just to get a passport, but they're not even traveling soon. Like, do you really need to do that? I don't think so. And the more we're able to get through this backlog, the sooner we're going to be able to get back into more normal times. And then there's no reason to do that at all. So I guess if you are doing this, you're actually, further exacerbating the problem and prolonging it. So I think that, I know that Tourist Canada employees are working around the clock. My goodness, I was at USAV and talking to the employees who, during the height of, the lineups outside of the complex there, they were there in some cases till 2, 3 in the morning and coming back at 7 in the morning for, a couple of weeks straight because they were doing everything they could to get people their passports ahead of travel. They really have gone above and beyond and worked them through, some challenging circumstances, but they're so dedicated to helping the public. So, I hope that we can, do what we can to help them as well, so that we can really tackle this backlog and make sure that for the people who really need their passports, we can still be able to deliver it. And for those who, if you don't need it right now, wait a couple more weeks, and we'll be back to a much more normal situation soon, and that will kind of help everybody, right? So
Yeah.
I know it's frustrating, I know it's challenging, but let's all see what we can do together to try and fix this situation.
All right, Minister, we thank you for your time this afternoon. Much appreciated.
Thank you so much to both of you.
Thank you.